All right, thank you.
Okay. First of all, we humans haven't changed for 100,000 years since we emerged from Africa. 100,000 years ago, we were hunter-gatherers who, after the hunt, went to the campfire and told jokes and stories. Therefore, we have the mind of a hunter-gatherer who bonds with other hunter-gatherers and has a good time at night. That's the architecture for meetings. We will have meetings in the future because meetings convey something that teleconferencing does not. Teleconferencing does not communicate body language, does not communicate true intentions, emotions. You can't bond with people via a TV screen. And that's what conferences will do. Because if you're a hunter-gatherer, you have to size up the other hunters because your life depends upon it. Who's going to guard your back? Who's going to stab you in the back? Who do you trust? And at night, who do you pal with? Who do you share your most intimate secrets and desires and longings and vision? You can't do that on teleconferencing. You can't get drunk teleconferencing. You can't pal with a teleconference. Therefore, that's why the peopleless city never happened. Some people say that not only will meetings be out the window, but cities will be out the window because we'll all teleconference and we won't have to commute. That'll solve the energy crisis because we won't have cars. We'll all telecommute from home. But today, commuting is even bigger than it is in the past. Why? Because the boss still likes to see the staff likes to bond with each other, and if you're the head of the company, you want to look people in the eye and watch them sweat. You want to know who's lying to you. You want to size up the character of people. Who can bear the pressure? You want to see them up close. And that's why we have cities. That's why we have companies and company headquarters, and that's why we still have the corporate structure intact. And that's why we will have meetings in the future. Because if you want to know the gossip, if you want to know the scuttlebutt, if you want to know what's really happening, what's on people's minds, a sense of the collective feeling of a group of people who represent the industry, you can't do that on teleconferencing. None of this can be teleconference. The body language, the consensus, the feeling of being part of a camaraderie, spilling your guts out, you can't do that on teleconferencing. And therefore, we'll have meetings and conferences to share the data, get the latest gossip, find out what's really happening, size each other up, find out who's offering a job, who's not, find out who's expanding, who's contracting. All this stuff cannot be done unless you get critical mass of people at a conference.
Okay, you talked about how the telephone was created the network that moved us into the 20th century, and now
among other things, right?
Yeah, and so how does that change the nature of collaborative work? And I'm thinking that kind of in the context of meetings, that's a place where you work collaboratively, but they don't have the same functions. They're not as much as a place to get data, to be trained. So are there ways that you think the physical spaces that we meet are going to change? How how time is organized? Do you think those things are going to change as a result of the information everywhere nature of the future? Like, will we have our tablecloths might, well, have the agendas and...
Some things will stay the same, and other things will be changed beyond comprehension. First of all, we'll still have meetings, but the nature of the meetings will change because some of the delegates will be teleconferenced, and some of them will be here holographically. And when you look around the room, you'll see the image in your contact lens with imaginary people sitting in chairs because they're sitting in their home. So at a conference like this, maybe half the people can't show up, but they want to be here, they'll pay, and their holographic image will be in the audience, and you'll see them via your contact lens. So you won't have the intimacy of bonding with them, but they'll be able to ask questions and interact at meetings holographically through your contact lens, because your contact lens will see images that don't exist in real reality. But as far as your network of friends, there is a number that is about 150, which is the number of people you write Christmas cards to, the number of people that you consider close enough to want to engage in a nice conversation. 150 is about the right number for Homo sapiens. For chimpanzees, it's about 50, okay? So 150 is basically the size of a group of soldiers, basically the size of a team at an office, basically the size of a tribe before it begins to split in half to create two tribes. 150 is a canonical number for Homo sapiens. And among primates, we have different numbers. Orangutans, chimpanzees have different numbers, but humans is about 150. So 150 is about the maximum you'll find at the home office, the maximum working unit in the military. But the internet then allows you to have both. You can then have an intimate group of maybe 5 or 6 that you really, as a working group, but you'll have the wisdom of the entire population of the world through the internet. So we'll have the best of both worlds. We'll be able to have intimate conversations with maybe 5 or 10 people in a working group. The 150 is a canonical number, which is basically the size of the home office, and we'll have access to the planet Earth. So it means that who we consider who we are will change as a consequence. For example, children think nothing of playing video games with people from around the world. They get on a video game, bingo, somebody from Russia, somebody from Kazakhstan, somebody from Australia, all right there playing video games. And so their concept of their grouping will also change. They will no longer think of the enemy as being another country, because your best friend you play video games with is from that country. And so you'll know more about somebody from around the world than your next door neighbor. And so children are going to have a different mindset than the adults of today. Adults of today still think in groupings of networks, the home office, the state, the nation, and then the world. Nations are going to still be here, but our concept of nationalism will change because our loyalties will begin to change. We'll think more globally, we'll think more regionally, rather than simply looking at the national boundaries of the past. We will still have national boundaries, but they're going to mean less. Now, national boundaries formed because of the emergence of capitalism. Capitalism requires a common currency to have commerce and the exchange of goods and services. And therefore, a common currency basically was a creation of capitalism, which in turn created the modern nation state. For example, during medieval times, France, as we know France today, did not exist. There was something called France, but it was not a political and economic unit. There's a joke that when you had a horse going across France, you would change currency at the same rate that you changed your horse. So France, as we know it today, did not exist, okay? Now we have nations, but in the future, that will also change because capital is international now. Capitalism created the nation, but capitalism is now beyond national boundaries, and children are going to live in a world where they think nothing about buying consumer products and horsing around and gossiping with people from around the world. And so we're beginning to see a new basis for the social structure of the planet. We physicists call this type 1. We are headed for a type 1 civilization in about 100 years. It'll take about 100 years before we become a fully functioning type 1 civilization.
And do you think then we'll stop thinking in terms of international meetings? It'll just be a meeting?
Well, we'll have nations because we'll have taxation, sewer systems. We'll still have, militias and stuff like that. So we'll still have nations, except they're not going to be so all-powerful as they were. Like, for example, if you go to Europe, the boundary between, let's say, Austria and Italy is quite large. But if you're in America, the boundary between Tennessee and the neighboring states is nothing, right?
Right.
So why is it that in the United States you can go 3,000 miles and consider yourself an American, but in Europe you go 50 miles and you have to change language, right? And so America is a higher level of integration than Europe, where we have a common language. Now take that example and look at it planetary. We will have a planetary language. On the internet, the two main languages are English and Mandarin. Already on the internet, you can see the beginning of a type 1 language. And of course, the internet itself is a type 1 telephone system. And we're seeing the beginning of a type 1 culture. So in the future, we will be bicultural. You go to any country today, and the elite are bilingual. They speak English, and they are, of course, speaking the local lingua franca of their country. In the future, the world will be bicultural. You will have a local culture, you'll have the dances and songs of your culture, and then you will rock and roll, and you'll dance and sing to the latest rap songs. You'll have Gucci and Chanel clothes. You'll watch the soccer game, watch the Olympics. And so we'll be bicultural. We'll have a planetary culture and a local culture exist simultaneously.
Great. Do you have time for one more question?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm curious about if there's any way to predict what the changes in the biological changes of having augmented reality, if there's any way to know if that will change, like how we, eye contact is so important. Eye contact is one of the main ways that we communicate with each other. How will having contact lens that's giving you augmented information, is there any way to know how that might change our biological communications with one another?
Well, the way we interact with each other will change in the future. We have a certain body language, and we have a certain way in which we interact with people that, for example, robots don't have. Robots are going to have to be taught how to do this. So, for example, respect. When people walk into a room, there's a hierarchy. Who's the boss? Who are the staff members? Who do you defer to, right? You have to learn these things. It's quite complicated, the body language of human interactions. In the future, you'll have a contact lens. The contact lens will tell you who is the boss, who is the underling. You will know the social ranking of everybody. And so it'll be a little bit easier to navigate. At a cocktail party, you'll know who's offering a job. You'll know who to go to because you know that certain companies are hiring. And so at a cocktail party, you'll zero in on the people that you want to know. And so cocktail parties today are, of course, a big free-for-all. You don't know who you're going to talk to, who you're going to wind up talking to, right? Waste the whole evening talking to, quote, the wrong person, right? In the future, you'll know everybody in the room. And so we'll be able to, so human interactions are going to be easier. Plus, deception is, of course, very difficult to discern. You have to look at people's eyes to find out whether they're lying to you, right? In the future, when a guy says, hey, I'm not married, whoom, you see the biography, yes, he is married, he has 3 kids, thrice divorced, blah, blah, blah. You will know who you're talking to, and so deception is going to be a lot more difficult in the future. As you talk to somebody, it's going to be more difficult to lie. Of course, people will still lie, but it's going to be more difficult to lie because your contact lens will scan the internet and find out, yes, he is married, has 3 kids, right? And paying divorce payments, right? So women will have an easier time sizing up guys because guys, of course, will lie, right? That's what guys do, unfortunately. And so people will have an easier time of it. So social interactions are going to be different if you have instant knowledge in your contact lens as you talk to somebody.
Okay. All right. Thank you.